In 1984, Paramount Pictures gambled nearly 30% of an entire blockbuster's budget on a 23-year-old kid altering the DNA of Hollywood forever. But what happens when the neon lights fade and 4 decades of ruthless industry evolution grind a legendary cast down to their very bones? Who leveraged a 1,984 paycheck into an untouchable 2026 empire, and who was tragically erased by the merciless march of time? The glamorous streets of Beverly Hills hide dark, untold realities that are finally surfacing today. Number 1, Eddie Murphy, $4,000. At 23, Eddie Murphy was a comedic supernova. Born in Brooklyn to a transit police officer and a telephone operator, his raw charisma made him the ultimate wildcard to replace Sylvester Stallone. Stepping into the iconic jacket of Axel Foley, the street-smart cop navigating elite Los Angeles Murphy did not just carry the film. He became its entire beating heart. Knowing his immense box office leverage, Paramount capitulated to his demands, securing his magnetic performance with a staggering upfront salary of $4 million a sum, swallowing nearly a third of the entire budget. Now, in the landscape of 2026, the 65-year-old Titan remains fiercely alive, presiding over a massive multi-hundred-million-dollar empire. While many contemporaries faded, Murphy resides securely in his Californian estates, occasionally stepping back into the spotlight for highly curated legacy projects. He never abandoned his art. He transcended the Hollywood machine to become an untouchable mogul. The modern public reveres him not just as a nostalgia act, but as a pioneering architect of comedy who transformed a risky 1,984 paycheck into lifetime cinematic royalty. Number 2, Judge Reinhold, $150. $250. Stepping out of a monolithic lead's shadow required a distinct brand of earnest charm. At 27, Judge Reinhold, born in Delaware to a trial lawyer and a devoted mother, provided exactly that. He stepped into the polished shoes of Detective Billy Rosewood, the naive, rule-following local cop, whose rigid world is utterly shattered by Foley's chaotic methods. As the primary co-star sharing the heaviest screen time alongside Murphy, Reinhold secured a highly respectable upfront fee, estimated between $150,000 and $250,000. Fast forward to 2026, the 68-year-old actor remains alive and deeply sustained by his enduring 80s legacy. While he never amassed a billionaire's astronomical fortune, he secured a comfortable multi-million-dollar safety net. Residing quietly outside the grueling Hollywood epicenter, Reinhold embraces a much slower pace, only occasionally returning for modern legacy sequels that honor his roots. Today's public remembers him with deep, affectionate nostalgia. To the world, he will forever remain the endearing, gun-toting sidekick who perfectly anchored the explosive, unpredictable brilliance of the decade's defining blockbuster. Number 3, John Ashton, $150. $200. At 36, John Ashton, born in Massachusetts to a hardworking family, perfected the art of the world-weary veteran. He masterfully embodied Sergeant John Taggart, the gruff, ulcer-prone half of the local detective duo who was constantly pushed to the edge by Foley's chaotic brilliance. Sharing the heavy lifting of the crucial supporting comedic arc, Ashton successfully commanded a highly respectable upfront package, estimated between $150,000 and $200,000, perfectly mirroring his primary co-star's financial compensation. In the reality of 2026, the world deeply mourns the absence of this remarkable talent. Ashton tragically passed away from cancer in late 2024 at the age of 76. However, before his death, he secured a deeply emotional, triumphant return in the recent Legacy sequel, granting audiences one final, unforgettable bow. He did not die in financial ruin. He left behind a secure estate built on decades of relentless industry work. Today's public reveres him not merely as a comedic foil, but as the indispensable, grounded anchor of a generational franchise. Number 4, Ronny Cox, $100 million, $111 million. At 46, Ronny Cox, born in New Mexico to a carpenter and a homemaker, brought a steely gravitas to the chaotic screen. He masterfully embodied Lieutenant Andrew Bogomil, the rigid but ultimately principled commanding officer of the Beverly Hills precinct. As a highly seasoned veteran trusted to anchor the crucial secondary storyline, Cox commanded a robust upfront salary estimated between $100,000 and $150,000. This lucrative compensation perfectly reflected his undeniable seniority and his ability to project absolute authority amidst the surrounding comedic madness. Fast forward to 2026, the 87-year-old luminary remains alive and creatively liberated. Comfortably supported by a solid multi-million-dollar fortune built over decades of iconic roles, Cox has largely abandoned Hollywood's relentless grind. Instead, he passionately reinvented himself as a touring folk musician and singer-songwriter, happily trading sprawling studio lots for intimate acoustic stages. Today's public reveres him not only as the quintessential cinematic authority figure of the 80s, but as a deeply authentic, lifelong artist who fearlessly followed his musical soul into his twilight years. Number 5. Steven Berkoff. $100, $150. At 47, Steven Berkoff, born in London to a hardworking tailor and a homemaker, brought a chilling aristocratic menace to the bright Californian sun. He masterfully embodied Victor Maitland, the ruthless, untouchable art dealer and murderous central villain. His cold, calculating screen presence was absolutely essential to balance Murphy's explosive comedic energy. For anchoring the dark, violent heart of the narrative, Hollywood compensated the distinguished British theatrical import with a solid upfront salary estimated between $100,000 and $150,000, firmly cementing his status as the premier antagonist. Today, in 2026, the 88-year-old powerhouse remains alive and fiercely active. Safely insulated by a multi-million-dollar fortune built through relentless artistic pursuit, Berkoff never allowed Hollywood's typecasting to confine him. Instead, he retreated to his true kingdom, continuing to write, direct, and star in avant-garde theater across Europe. The modern public reveres him not merely as a terrifying 80s cinematic villain, but as an uncompromising, brilliant playwright who cleverly utilized commercial blockbusters to fund a pure, lifelong devotion to high art. Number 6. Lisa Eilbacher. $75, $100. At 28, Lisa Eilbacher, born in Saudi Arabia to an American oil executive, stepped into the fiercely male-dominated arena of 80s action cinema. She portrayed Jeanette "Jenny" Summers, the loyal childhood friend whose tragic crisis pulls Axel Foley into the deadly Beverly Hills underworld. Despite serving as the primary female lead, the era's restrictive industry standards severely limited her overall screen time compared to her male counterparts. Consequently, she secured an upfront salary estimated between $75,000 and $100,000, a stark revealing reflection of the gendered wage structures governing blockbuster casting during that decade. Now in the reality of 2026, the 69-year-old actress remains alive, but has entirely vanished from the blinding Hollywood spotlight. Quietly retiring from the grueling industry in the late 90s, she resides peacefully and comfortably on a secure, privately managed fortune. She never succumbed to the tragic pitfalls of explosive fame or public scandal. She simply chose to walk away on her own terms. Today's public remembers her with deep, wistful nostalgia, viewing her as a quintessential 80s icon who gracefully anchored a chaotic masterpiece before executing the ultimate vanishing act. Number 7. Paul Reiser. $50, $75. At 28, Paul Reiser, born in New York to a health food distributor and a homemaker, was a rising talent in the competitive stand-up comedy circuit. He stepped into the gritty Detroit precinct as Jeffrey Axel Foley's fast-talking, highly anxious colleague. Relegated to the opening sequences before the glamorous West Coast narrative took over the relatively unproven cinematic commodity, accepted a modest upfront salary estimated between $50,000 and $75,000. This entry-level paycheck was a brilliant tactical investment, merely serving as a critical stepping stone into the vast Hollywood machinery. Fast forward to the reality of 2026, the 70-year-old luminary is alive, thriving, and sitting upon a massive multi-million-dollar television empire. He did not fade into obscurity. Instead, he evolved into a sitcom juggernaut before successfully transitioning into acclaimed modern prestige dramas. Residing comfortably in California, Reiser remains a highly sought-after, actively working veteran. Today's public views him not just as Foley's forgotten Detroit backup, but as a deeply beloved, versatile icon who transformed a brief $50,000 supporting gig into an unbreakable 4-decade-long legacy. Number 8. Jonathan Banks. $40. $60. At 37, Jonathan Banks, born in Washington, D.C., to a mother who actively served in the CIA, stepped effortlessly into the chilling skin of a cold-blooded enforcer. He portrayed Zack, the ruthless, dead-eyed henchman of Victor Maitland, and the lethal catalyst who directly murders Axel Foley's best friend. Operating purely as a trusted secondary antagonist, Banks secured an upfront salary estimated between $40,000 and $60,000. This standard Screen Actors Guild rate served as a modest, pragmatic paycheck for a relentless working actor tasked with handling the heavy, violent lifting of the criminal underworld narrative. Today, in the landscape of 2026, the 79-year-old veteran remains alive and stands as an absolute, undisputed television legend. Safely commanding a multi-million-dollar fortune, Banks experienced an unprecedented late-career renaissance that completely eclipsed his early cinematic roles. Evolving from a standard 80s henchman into the most beloved, brilliantly complex fixer in modern television history, he remains highly active and deeply respected in the industry. The 2026 public reveres him universally. They do not merely remember him as the man who crossed Axel Foley, but idolize him as an immortal, grizzled icon of prestige television. Number 9. James Russo, $30, $50. At 31, James Russo, born in New York to a working-class Italian-American family, became the tragic catalyst of a cultural phenomenon. He played Mikey Tandino, Axel Foley's charismatic but compromised childhood friend, whose brutal execution sets the entire narrative in motion. Because his screen time was confined strictly to the opening sequence, Russo accepted a modest upfront salary estimated between $30,000 and $50,000. It was a brief but unforgettable paycheck, cementing him as the vital emotional anchor that justified the ensuing Beverly Hills chaos. Today, in 2026, the 72-year-old veteran remains alive and relentlessly dedicated to his craft. Sustained by a comfortable fortune built over 4 decades of gritty cinematic work, he never faded into obscurity. Bypassing massive mainstream blockbusters, Russo carved out a highly respected niche in independent cinema, frequently lending his menacing gravitas to auteur-driven crime epics. The modern public reveres him not as a fleeting casualty of the 80s, but as an uncompromising, intensely reliable character actor who masterfully sustained a lifelong career in Hollywood's dark underworld. Number 10, Bronson Pinchot, $20, $30. At 25, Bronson Pinchot, born in New York to a bookbinder and a typist, delivered an absolute masterclass in scene stealing. He portrayed Serge, the fabulously eccentric, espresso-pushing art gallery assistant. Cast in a minor cameo meant to shoot for only a few days, his improvised comedic genius completely derailed the production in the best way possible. For this brief but legendary appearance, he secured an upfront salary estimated between $20,000 and $30,000. It was a seemingly insignificant paycheck for a short-term contract, yet it immortalized him in the comedy pantheon and instantly launched his television career. Today, in the reality of 2026, the 66-year-old actor remains alive and creatively flourishing. Resting comfortably on a multi-million-dollar fortune, Pinchot has brilliantly pivoted away from the grueling Hollywood on-camera grind. He has reinvented himself as one of the most prolific, award-winning audiobook narrators in the world, while also passionately restoring historic properties. The 2026 public views him with immense affection. They remember him not just as the hilariously unforgettable Serge, but revere him as a versatile vocal artist who successfully redefined his legacy on his own terms. The neon streets of 1984 have faded, but their performances refuse to be silenced. Whether their off-screen lives concluded in tragic silence or expanded into untouchable empires, the cinematic legacy they forged remains an immortal part of pop culture history. They built the absolute blueprint of the modern blockbuster. Hollywood's glamorous facade still hides countless explosive secrets in the dark. Do not let the next investigation vanish. Hit that subscribe button immediately. Turn on notifications and join the mission before the truth is permanently buried.